Craig Smoak, Paul Catalina, David Smoak, Hayden, Emma, and also Armstrong in studio. And so yesterday, of course, here comes the news on the college football playoff and the eventual expansion from 4 to what will be 12. And we're now joined by Tim Brando, Fox Sports, long time. He loves college. He loves sports in general. Also about to be inducted into the Louisiana. Is that the Media, Radio, TV Hall of Fame? What is that?
No, it's the Louisiana Sports Hall of Fame.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it encompasses all sports, and those that have followed it, they have an award named after the great Dave Dixon, who was the founder of the USFL and helped make sure the Superdome was built, along with the late Governor John McKithen back in the 70s. And they have a Distinguished Journalist Award that they've given out routinely through the years. But what makes this one extra special for me is that because I'm 65, I don't know how you feel about halls of fame, but to me, when you start getting that kind of recognition, that means the end is near. I don't really want to think that the end is near. I'd like to believe that I've got a lot of tread left on these vocal tires of mine, and I plan on doing it for a while. And I had told the leadership of the Hall of Fame, listen, keep me off the ballot. I don't even want to be on it. There are a lot of guys that have been radio play-by-play guys for schools in this state that have been there for 50-plus years, 45 to 50 years. I said they deserve the recognition. But they came up with a new award called the Ambassadors Award, with the title of it basically meaning guy that goes into the communications business and brings a very positive light to his home state, and they call it the Ambassadors Award. But they're not going to give it regularly. It's not going to be given on an annual basis. So I guess I'll be the lone recipient until such time as another whack job like me comes along. And that's a really cool thing. That really is humbling that that'll be the case, that when you go into the museum, you'll be seeing and hearing my work until such time as someone else is a recipient. So I'm really flattered by that.
Well, you should be. You earned it. Be careful when they tell you it's the Tim Brando Memorial Award. Then you're in trouble. then something's weird's going on, right?
Yeah. No, I'm. Sometimes be careful what you wish for or hope for, in life.
Yeah.
And those things come into mind, especially when you just got your Medicaid. When you just get Medicaid and you begin to save some money on your insurance, it's like, oh, okay, well, I still think I want to work at Fox on Saturdays, and I still want to do a lot of college basketball. And if somebody says to me, hey, Tim, we got a golf tournament here, would you like to work it? I'd love to work it. So, yeah, you get my drift.
Yeah.
I feel you.
Yeah, I do. I'm 3 years away from that, but it's approaching very quickly. So, you said you get your wish. The college football playoff, the news that kind of scattered throughout the day yesterday. Your thoughts about what you saw, read, and digested?
Banner day. I mean, go back and look at any of the on-brandos that I've done since I've been at Fox on Saturdays that started on Fox.com that you might have seen or heard. I've been complaining about college football's postseason since long before the BCS was ever created. This is my friend Dan Wetzel. I got to give him some credit. He and Jeff Passan, who's a great baseball writer, they wrote the book Death to the BCS. And I remember during that period, my radio show was in the middle of its 14-and-a-half-year run, and I routinely had those guys on the show, and we just were pounding the gavel, every day, over and over and over again. And, and listening to that teleconference yesterday, I'm sure Wetzel was probably thinking, and I certainly felt like, oh, okay, yeah, I remember talking about that. Oh, yeah, that's right. That's what we said 15 years ago. They're finally coming around. This is finally happening, and it's really going to transform the sport. I'm happy to say that I'm alive when it happened. I remember years ago working with Bino Cook on the original Game Day, and Bino would say, No, it'll never happen in my lifetime. It might happen in yours. But the only reason that they finally do it will be for the money. And by the way, he's right.
Yeah.
The only reason they are doing it is for the money. But as I like to tell these traditionalists, these fans, and a lot of them are well-meaning, and I get some of their points of view. I do. But elitist fans, especially those in the stronghold of college football, where they know their teams go undefeated or with one loss, and they know they're in the Final Four. They know it. They're elitists. They don't want to have their teams have to play any more games. They want the easiest road to the national championship. Well, college football, before we had the Coalition, Alliance, and BCS, we gave out 3 or 4 national titles. You know, we were doing it with every imaginable poll in creation. Okay, you could make up a poll, award your team a national title, and trust me when I tell you, all those titles. What do they put it on the Alabama helmet now? 17. I think it's 17 on the Alabama helmet. Okay, we could poke holes in about 5 of those. Okay, because of the way they got them. Now, granted, some of they didn't win national titles a few years when they should have. Okay, when they were the better team. But the wire service polls and the writers were against them because of, among other things, the politics of the time. So it works in a variety of ways. There's no question that each move that was made has been a move to a better choice. The BCS was horrible. The college football playoff, a little better. It granted some more access, but it didn't deliver what they told us it would. They told us it would be a true playoff, and it wasn't. They told us that we would have a system that would be equitable, and it wasn't. It was a private club, a pure playoff privileged party. And now, with 12 teams, and look, the good news here is that even those elitists, all right, are going to be rewarded because it took some younger leadership among college football's commissionership to get this through. You know, I don't think that, maybe 10 years ago we would have been able to pull this off. Greg Sankey of the SEC, who publicly had said, no, there's been nothing wrong with we're very happy with 4, and we see no reason why 4 doesn't still work. Well, you saw what happened. He was saying what he needed to say for his constituency, but behind the scenes he knew, particularly in the wake of the pandemic and all the money that everyone was hemorrhaging, that something had to be done. And without his stewardship here, I don't think it does get done. Congratulations to all the commissioners, okay? And there are 3 new ones, Big Ten, ACC, and, of course, Greg Sankey, who's sort of the dean now, and he only replaced Mike Slive a few years ago. So they all worked hard at it, and I think some of the commissioners outside the Power 5, like Mike Oresco of the American Conference, who I think that one league did more to dismantle the 14 playoff and move to 12 than any other league. Craig Thompson, who's been in this business about as long as I have, out in the Mountain West, was pounding the drum big time behind the scenes. So all of those people, got together and really toiled for about a month and a half to put something together that really was for the presidents who ultimately have to sign off on this. There's absolutely no argument against it. It wouldn't have been announced if the presidents hadn't already privately signed off on it. So it's going to happen. The only question now is whether it'll be in 2023 or 2025. But we all owe those people a great debt of thanks because they had their minds open, they had their ears open, they listened, and just like I said, within this decade, there were a lot of deaf ears. There was a lot of tone deafness coming from those in power within intercollegiate athletics on this.
Tim, yeah, it did, and it happened relatively quickly based on the way that most college athletics legislation moves. If they were in charge of like the New Deal, we would have just gotten electricity yesterday. So
remember this. Okay, I'll take you back recent history. How did we get rid of the BCS? We got rid of the BCS because of the god-awful championship game when they put together a rematch between Alabama and LSU, and it turned into a 21-0 snooze fest, and Oklahoma State was locked out because they had lost a Thursday night game in Ames, Iowa, and they had just lost their women's basketball team had just been in a plane crash days earlier. I'm telling you, we would not have seen that change to 4 had it not been for the pressure put on in the aftermath of that debacle. So what do we have this year? We had another debacle. And we also had a lot of schools, and because of the pandemic, a lot of networks, a lot of people, everybody lost money. I mean, everybody did. And I think it takes a strange set of circumstances for any change to take place. But I'm crediting those in charge this time a lot more, fellas, because to go from 4 to 12 was even outside my realm. Mm-hmm. Okay, I told everybody that suggested more than 8 that I'm sorry, in today's current climate, you're not going to get anything past 8. And I was wrong. And I was wrong because a lot of guys in leadership positions thought big picture. You know, this was something that they felt mattered beyond just what's right in front of us. Why go to 8 when we can go to 12 and make more money now? We need the money now. And that's what they chose to do. And by the way, even though it's for money, think about the opportunity and the inclusion and what it will mean for some schools to just get in to the playoff for the very first time.
Yep.
I mean, it's not always about who wins. Who wins the championship doesn't matter. If anybody says, well, it'll still be the same teams at the end, who cares? Nobody cares. It's the construct that matters. It's the opportunity and the inclusion that matters. When Maryland-Baltimore County won that playoff game, that tournament game, a 16-1, nobody thought they were going to win the national championship. But is it one of the most memorable moments in the history of college basketball? I think so.
Yeah, and just going over, the last several years, we were talking with Max Olson. I mean, Baylor, who we cover on a daily basis, they'd have 3 playoff appearances. If you had extended it back the last 7 years, which would have made a world of difference for them instead of getting blocked out, with the TCU debacle and all of that. But,
right.
But Tim, how much does this, matter tremendously for those non-power 5s, those group of 5s? Because, one of the things that Max pointed out is if you're a Gus Malzahn now, why leave a Central Florida if you're having success? Because now you have the opportunity to get into the playoff, whereas before you probably have to start looking around going, well, shoot, I'm never going to get in this thing. I got to go to, Auburn to get in this thing.
Yeah, no question. Look at the last handful of years, and again, I pointed out Mike Oresco, the commissioner of the American. Look at the teams, okay? Houston, Memphis, UCF, Cincinnati. Mm-hmm. Okay? All of them. All of them had chances. And all of them were legit. I mean, Cincinnati would have beaten Georgia last year in a New Year's Six game had they been able to operate the clock properly in the last minute and a half. Okay, that game, even though Cincinnati didn't win it, I think that helped push this a little bit. It did. A number of things figured into the equation here. That was one of them. The biggest one, though, was the awful rating, and it was an awful rating for the Alabama-Ohio State National Championship game. You can't get 2 bigger names in college football than Alabama and Ohio State, and the rating was awful. Okay? It was off 25%. Part of the reason for that was the disinterest and the disjointed nature of college football's layoff between games that matter and the playoff and the championship, and it being surrounded and engulfed by the NFL playoff structure. The media basically dismisses college football once the NFL playoffs begin. And now, because the NFL has chosen to add another game, add to their playoffs, they moved the calendar back, and it enabled college football to have bigger games that matter more in the month of December and maybe even own that month and own a better part of the early portion of January. Just a very shrewd and smart move on their part. And That's been the issue here. College football fandom, where you are in Waco and where I am in Louisiana and Alabama and the Sun Belt, the Rust Belt, we love college football. It's not us that's been lost. Okay, it's the East Coast and the West Coast, which has a lot of households that have checked out for a long time. They have not cared about the game. And we lost a lot of juice as a result. And this is about bringing casual fans to the sport we love. And the other thing I love about this, the format will enable the teams during the regular season that prove themselves to have an open date. So don't tell me the regular season doesn't matter. Top 4 get an open date. And 5 through 8 will be at home. Mm-hmm. And they get to play on campus. Think about how big that'll be for on-campus sites to have a part of this. And those teams that are in the 9, 10, 11, 12 hole, if either one of them wins, any of them happen to win, it'll be like winning a national title for a lot of those teams. And the other factor here, and the selling point on this, I know, had to be, not only does it open it up for a group of 5 team to get in, it will eliminate the group of 5 and Power 5 analogies. You know, this complete dissing of all those not Power 5 needed to end from the start, and now it will. And I'm not here to tell you that 2 non-Power 5s, as we know them, will get in every year. I don't think they will, but there will be an occasion where it does happen. Consider the year when both Memphis and UCF were undefeated going into the game, and they played one of the best games ever. Okay, there's a chance that two could, but there's a better chance that the Big Ten, the SEC, and the Big 12 could get 2. Okay, they could get 2. Think of what that means monetarily for those leagues.
Tim, is there anything that you have read or watched or seen that you would change, that would put a Tim Brando asterisk on it?
With regard to the changes that have been made or proposed to this point? I know how a lot of that, probably the most criticism I've heard has been about not using the campuses for 2 rounds and enabling the bowls for both the quarterfinals and semis. I have no problem with the bowls being taken care of. I don't. I think, as Bob Bowlesby said yesterday, a cadre of new fans having an opportunity to see games that matter in college football is a great thing. I think, for instance, Notre Dame, although they are not in a conference, if they choose to go into a conference, it has to be the ACC. They signed a grant of rights. That's the only way for them to be in the top 4. But for Notre Dame, getting to play a home game as the number 5 team, let's say they go undefeated, they could never be ranked in the top 4. Best they could do was 5. Well, for them, a home game financially means more than having a bye week.
Yep.
And that home game basically is their conference championship. You know, you can look at it that way. Some have argued, well, there's too many games. Well, not really. It would be very rare for a team to have to play 17 total games. We're looking at, the top 4 teams really don't, they're not going to play any more games than they currently play. The second realm, 5 through 8, could play a 16th game instead of 15. We're at 15 now. To win it all, if you're in a conference, you have to play 15. And though if any team comes from that 9 through 12 range, you're talking about a 17th game. But that is very, very rare. It'll be, when that happens, there'll be a seismic reaction to it around the world. But I still don't think it's a problem. And they've been able to use the calendar well here. I really don't have a criticism. I really don't. My only curiosity, I do have a curiosity, and you guys need to watch this. And granted, full disclosure, I work at Fox. There's a lot of television rights negotiations to take place between now and 23. The Big Ten deal's got to be done before then. And before 2025, you're looking at all the conferences, okay? And ESPN and Fox share the rights with those conferences that rights will be coming up, including the Big 12, the Pac-12, and that's heavy duty. Will this now need to be a two-network, two-entity enterprise? That's going to be, I think, the hook to all of this. Will we see more than one network involved? Certainly the ball is in ESPN's court right now. They own the rights, so it's up to them to, as they say, pay the fiddler, because they have control of it. But there's a lot of money out there, and our industry's contracting, and people are spending money now on NHL rights. You got to re-up the NBA. They just re-up the NFL. But that's the thing to watch here. And I can't speak to it because, I'm not the organ grinder. I'm just the monkey. But with 12 teams involved, I think there's an opportunity here to see this thing move beyond just one network partnership. And we'll see if that transpires. Even if it doesn't, though, okay? Even if it doesn't, every game that we're calling on Fox in late October, November, it's certainly the conference championship games when they're played will be of greater value. Every game, think about the teams that may be ranked 20th, 21st, 18th, 19th, and we're in mid-October. How much more valuable are those games going to be? Some have said, we lose the game of the century. We won't have an LSU-Alabama game in November that matters as much as they used to. Well, okay, I'll give you that. But for every one of those games of the century, I'll give you 5 more games of greater importance every week between November 1st and the end of December.
Yeah, Tim, on the grant of rights, since you brought that up, there's been so much talk before this playoff proposal was announced about how that could be like D-Day for college football, where you see the even greater gap created between the Power Five and the Group of Five. Do you think that stems all of that talk off as far as the massive re-expansion?
Yes. Oh, yeah. I mean, listen, there are a lot of winners here. There are no losers. But the biggest winners here are those that have been told you're not in the Power Five. I go back to Mike Oresco, the commissioner of the American, who's been pounding P6. And I know that upset a few people in Conference USA and the Mountain West, but he was doing it for a reason. He had programs that had won New Year's Six games against SEC teams, multiple teams that had accomplished that. So he had to do that. And in the end result, everyone here is the beneficiary. Look, last year we had some of the greatest games played by teams outside the Power Five. Coastal Carolina, BYU was an unbelievable game, was it not?
Yeah.
I mean, that was one of the most enjoyable games of the year.
Yep.
But it didn't mean anything. Now those games will mean something. And by the way, that's another team to keep an eye on now, because unlike Notre Dame, BYU's not protected. Their leadership needs to take a long look at joining a conference. And I suspect that they will within the next calendar year.
Tim, I knew you'd have a lot to say, and you have over the years, and the fact that, like yesterday was college football Christmas early. Now we have to just wait for it to all come down. Congratulations on the Louisiana Sports Hall of Fame. First of all, that's an amazing you don't deserve that. You earned that, and then you deserve it as well. And thank you for being on the show whenever we reach out to you. It's a great day for college football, and thanks for your insight and background as well.
Well, as they say in Waco, I've been sicking them for quite some time. I'm finally glad to see the sick'em worked out.
There you go. You know your audience. Thank you, Tim. Appreciate that.
Take care, fellas.
Tim Brando. There's guys like Tim. We have a lot of weekly guests, but Tim Brando, Coop, among others, when they are Danny White, who we're going to replay here in a minute. It's been great to have some.
Yeah, Tim Brando. I'm sorry to cut you off there.
No, that's fine. Tim
Brando is one of the greatest college football voices of all time. And the sport will get worse the day that he steps down. I think he's in the same vein as like the Beano Cooks and the legendary figures. And I look out on the horizon, and I don't know who that next generation of those types of guys are going to be. Maybe it's like a Bob Stoops or people like that. But Man, he's just great, and the fact that he's one of those media people that actually loves what he covers. He doesn't despise it as though it's some burden. He loves college football, and that's great.
I think Joe Klatt is kind of the next guy on the horizon. He's really smart and doesn't get Tim doesn't get. They don't get bogged down in the noise. Yeah, Tim doesn't get bogged down in the noise. He cuts right to the quick. Yeah, and that I asked him. I didn't have the plan to ask him about the realignment stuff, but that was one of my first thoughts. There's been so much chatter about what's it going to look like. Oh my God, it could be D-Day for schools like Baylor. They might not be big enough to get into this 20-team super NFL league that the Blue Bloods will be a part of. But I mean, now there's no point in a league like that. There's incentive for it to stay how it is. Yeah, exactly. For the entertainment value, just on that and the regionality of it. So, but can you imagine? Just close your eyes and picture in your head. Don't do it if you're driving. Second week of December, Baylor is actually a really good football team, and they're welcoming in I don't know who's a team that would be a Florida for a playoff game at McLean Stadium. Can you imagine how insane that crowd would be? Yeah, and then obviously that would take place all over the country. That's just going to be incredible. Entertainment, and the games might not be good all the time, but as far as entertainment value and just mattering, that's going to be cool as hell. Some of the schools that are out of this, that have been left out of this thing, are big schools. Right. Memphis and UCF are big. I mean, they have big fan bases. Max, who was just on with us and talked about, there's 44 teams that would have made the playoffs in the last 10 years, okay? 9 times Alabama. Okay. Ohio State, 8. Clemson and Oklahoma, 7. Florida State, Georgia, and Oregon, 5. Florida, LSU, Notre Dame, Penn State, Stanford, Wisconsin, 4. We're still kind of in that blue blood or close to it. Baylor, Boise State, Kansas State, Michigan State, UCF, TCU, and Washington, 3. Hey, I'm sorry. I thought that Texas was the only one that mattered in the Big 12. So you're telling me Baylor, TCU, and K-State would have 3 playoff appearances. Auburn, Michigan, South Carolina. A&M and USC twice. Now listen to the list of at least one, and there's a bunch. Arizona, Arkansas, Cincinnati, Coastal Carolina, Colorado and Houston, Indiana, Iowa, Iowa State, Memphis, Miami, Mississippi State, Missouri, North Carolina, Northern Illinois, Oklahoma State, Ole Miss, Utah, Western Michigan. Who did I not mention among 44? Texas. And if I were a Texas fan and I heard that, it would really make me think about how bad the last few years have been, considering how bad some of the teams on the list that would have made it multiple times. Not even the team that played for the Big 12 championship. And considering how much trash has probably been talked in that time period by said Texas fans, you wouldn't even have made the playoff in an expanded scenario going back 5 years further than the playoff has existed. So keep talking your S. 6 of the 10 Big 12 current Big 12 teams would be included. Oklahoma, TCU, Baylor, Kansas State, Iowa State, Oklahoma State. And how different is the Big 12 looked at if all these teams are suddenly 3-time playoff appearances? Yeah. Baylor's automatically a bigger brand. Iowa State's a bigger brand. TCU's a bigger brand. I mean, you can't be that's the thing is these blue bloods, like the UTs, the OUs, it's we're in this country club, and we've talked about the country club, but it's they point down and laugh at those that they know will never be able to join them. And that's why there's always this gap of arrogance, is because it's not that those teams aren't worthy. They knew those teams would never have a chance to be worthy because they were going to get screwed somewhere along the way unless they went completely unbeaten without any trouble at all. But now that's over. That's potentially over. 3 former Big 12 teams, Colorado, Missouri, and A&M, would have been in. Yeah. 2 former Southwest Conference teams in Houston and Arkansas. So not only, that's 11, all right, and still never mentioned the University of Texas or my favorite program either, because they have sucked for a decade. Arkansas would have made it once. Yes. Arkansas. And they've had a terrible last 20 years when you really think about their history. So Max Olson with that.